Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I do apologise for coming. You're all jump. Anyway, those of you who are joining us as we speak, just give me a moment. We're just going to get the everything just ready for you. So give me just a minute. Okay, we'll be with you in just a moment or two. Right, there we go. Good. Excellent. I'm just going to slightly resize the screen so we'll be with you. Okay. There we go. Good. Well, first of all, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Welcome everyone who's joined us as we speak. And so delighted to be sharing hopefully lots of value today. So hopefully you've all come armed with your questions. Do please feel free to raise some questions in the chat. And if you could just very kindly also drop in your first name and last name in the chat, along with what you're really passionate about, that'd be really interesting. Actually, if you could just indicate in the chat whether you've joined via Facebook or YouTube, and also if video and sound is okay. Muriel, on your side with the feeds on Facebook and YouTube, is it appearing okay?
Yeah, they're both appearing absolutely fine.
Brilliant. Okay, so I think without further ado, we'll get started. Also, the other thing is that you are very welcome to drop in questions as you feel like. And if the questions are really good, we may give you the opportunity to join us as part of the live stream as well. So, but that's obviously very much optional, as it were. So, Muriel, can you just confirm the feeds are okay on YouTube and Facebook and audio?
Yeah,
good.
They're all fine.
Lovely. All right. So we'll get started. So today's session is about bringing you're optimizing your systems for business growth, and we'll be looking at certain key strategies around that. And in particular, we've already discussed about introduce ourselves in the chat, so that's absolutely fine. And we're going to look at basically, first of all, let's look at how the world's changed since January, February this year. So. And I'm sure you would agree as well, we're very, very fortunate in this country because, assuming you're in the UK or the US or maybe parts of Asia, because, we only need to look what's happened since sort of January, February this year, right in the middle of lockdown then. Thank goodness we're coming through the worst of that now. And, thank God for vaccines as well. And I do really feel for our Indian friends and also in South Africa and other countries as well, where clearly it's a massive problem. So, but we're very, very lucky over here. And what I would just say as well, what is nice is to actually see the economy start to open up again. So this has all happened in the last few months. I think it's fair to say probably in the US and the UK, there is a lot more optimism now. And clearly that's going to, the big thing, which is obviously going to be a bit delayed, of course, there's a whole area around travel. But nevertheless, it's all overall it's positive, and the crucial thing is we get to where we want to be by be prepared to adapt and change. So this really is a case of it's about those businesses which do adapt, change, and innovate. It's the companies which haven't adapted to what's going on, which of course are going to be real issues. Now, ironically enough, this isn't so much meant for some of the entities which tragically have gone because none of us were really prepared for what was going to happen in March last year. Obviously, there are certain corporate entities, especially some of the large retail chains, which in reality they probably would have gone anyway. It's just happened a lot more quickly because certain of those entities didn't adapt and change and possibly listen to their customers enough as well. So change can be a massive threat on one hand, but if handled the right way, it can also be a massive opportunity as well. And what I was planning to cover as part of today is your optimized systems for business growth. So this is very much looking at what we class as your strategic guidance systems. So what are the key numbers, that sort of dashboards around that in terms of measuring performance, your value and brand proposition. And we'll also be looking at what strategy you can put in place to amplify your brand. And we'll also be looking at what you need to put in place, ideally, to have a well-oiled machine in terms of what we class as the social selling blueprint, which is lead generation, prospect nurturing, and sales optimization. And then the final part is how can you surprise and delight your customers so they want to buy more from you and also become very active referrers in your business. This is very much under the mantra of bringing your sales forward, amplifying your brand, and getting your time back. Okay, so if we can help you in those three main ways in terms of the overall development of your business, then that's great. And what we'll also be discussing is a bit about your ideal marketing and product mix. We will look at LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Google Insights. We'll be having another session on Thursday. For those of you who can join us on Thursday, it's like a bonus session as part of the live stream. We'll be discussing LinkedIn advanced strategies as part of the session on Thursday. We'll be giving a bit of an introduction to that today, plus explaining about how all these social media platforms actually tie in together. And we'll be giving you a little bit of an introduction to what we class as BizGrowth Time Machine, which is a solution basically in a box which really helps to drive your sales-based opportunities moving forwards. And also we can look at things like your action plan. And as I've explained, we've got the bonus session on Thursday. Fundamentally, if you follow the recommendations we'll be covering today and on Thursday, what we want to see happen is that you're able to generate a really strong lead flow of opportunities. So for every 100 people you reach out to, you can generate potentially 10 hot prospects where they're either asking for more information or to have sales-based conversations. If you can get that working the way you want, you really have got the beginnings of a really well-oiled machine. So who's this for? It's for CEOs and leaders who want business growth. It's also for those who are open-minded and leaders who value their time. And we particularly like to work with people who are very aspirational, who want to have a big impact. So if that is you, then you're very much in the right place. Who it isn't really for is for those people, and I'm all guilty of this at times, I think we all are, but it's very easy to get stuck in a rut, basically. And we must remember what Albert Einstein said, and that's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. If you don't agree with me on that, that's a very profound, very true statement, then you're probably in the wrong place. But I don't think that applies to anyone here on today's live stream. So it is your chance to be involved. I just want to see as well, Muriel, I'm not getting into anything on my feed here. If someone could just introduce themselves in the chat as well, please. Are you seeing anything on your side?
No, nothing at all. I think people came in just after you'd asked them to.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just reiterate again for those of you who have joined since we first started. If you could just very kindly introduce yourselves in the chat, tell us what you're really passionate about, and also just confirm that everything's good on your side as well. It's always nice to know that we are listening to what everyone is actually saying. So let me just go back so I can see what's going on. So let's go on to the next part, really. So it's a bit of a quick introduction from me and Muriel. So meet the family. It sounds like a typical Godfather type thing, doesn't it? But that's my wife there, and also our son Sam. He's rather too good at chess for my liking, and that's us as a family in times when we were able to travel. And that's our lovely dog called Gus, who's just turned a year, and of course he knows how to pull every heartstring and every trick in the book, as you would expect. And Muriel, do you want to give a very quick intro into yourself?
Yeah, that's me and my hubby. I've got 3 boys who we obviously adore, very proud of them. So yeah, that's me and my family.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we got the 3 boys always made me laugh, actually, because there's a certain person there on the extreme right who used to have a reptile when he was in his early teens, and I think he's decided to take on the character reptile there, Muriel, hasn't he? So he
likes his body art, so he calls it.
And they're all really nice men as well, so got to know them all very well. So in terms of more on the professional side, obviously I'm the founder of Business Growth Bureau. The organisation was formed about 7 years ago. what I really believe in, and I know Muriel's really passionate about this as well, is always about serving people in the best possible way that you can. And so therefore, clients, looking after our clients to the highest possible standards is really important. I also believe what we class as circular relationships. So if you can put strategies in place where you make sure all the stakeholders have got a vested interest in your success and the other way around, you build a very strong business. So, for example, quite often a lot of corporates will do a lot of cheap talk about a so-called win-win. And the trouble is that when you hear it from a corporate, it invariably means it's a win-lose, i.e. I'm the bigger company, you're the little minnow, as it were. And in reality, what I feel is really important is you make everyone feel really valued in their dealings with you. So if you're an investor or a prospect or a client, if you've got partners you work with, associates, suppliers, the suppliers we also regard as being like stakeholders, because it goes back to this, is you don't know who they know as well. And of course, your own management team and your staff, of course, at the center of everything you do, because without them, you potentially don't have a business unless it's very much a lifestyle business. And we're very fortunate that we've got a very good key advisory team. Chris Cooper, who is specialized in leadership support, but also has run a radio show for the last 10 years. I can't believe it's over 400 episodes in total. Karen Davies, who's a typical fun lover, loves travel. So for her, it's been a bit of a pain, especially over the last year or so. But she's also got a lot of corporate business experience and also very heavily involved previously with an organization called Vistage, which some of you may know of. And Alex Rinn, formerly IBM, responsible for at his peak when he was still there. He retired, I think, from them about 2 or 3 years ago, was responsible for 5,000 staff. So, of course, it's very useful to be able to tap into his knowledge and expertise. I'm very grateful for that. And, of course, we've got the delightful Barnaby Winter. And if anyone knows Barnaby Winter, you'll know he's very much larger than life and full of lots of energy and support. So in terms of sharing market insights and how this will impact your business, a few ideas around this as well, and which you might find really useful. Now, I'm just going to say hello to Anthony as well. Thank you very much for just confirming you're with us today. And yes, I think you joined us on last Thursday's live stream as well. So thank you for that, Anthony. It's really appreciated. And what we're going to be discussing today is the sort of business and market distribution by limited companies. And you may question why this is so important. Well, the reason is if you look at the distribution of business in the UK, and these percentages are very similar in most Western-style economies, which does include the US, Canada, parts of Asia, and so on, and the Australasias. The numbers will be different, of course, but the percentages will be roughly the same. So in the UK, for example, there's 3.2 million businesses which are one-person companies. And if that excludes sole traders, by the way, so that number is actually quite a bit higher than that. And that accounts for 74% of the market, okay, or those people. If you employ between 2 and 10 people, that's about, in the UK, 1.2 million people, and that accounts for about 21% of business in the UK. And then you've got another 4%, which are those which employ between 11 and 50 people. So that's 99% of businesses in the UK employ less than 50 people. And then the 1% is companies employing more than 250 people, but not corporates. And the corporates are actually showing 0%. Now, that's obviously misleading, but it's just that it's a fraction of a percent. So it might be something like 0.05%. Or less are corporate entities. But of course, and there's only 6,500 of those. Obviously, the corporate entities represent about half the workforce. But of course, the smaller to medium-sized businesses are actually the engine of the economy. So this is, because we're particularly in the UK, we're quite service-based. When you get something like a pandemic come along, as a case in point, clearly that has quite a big impact very quickly. On the other hand, those businesses which do come through on the other side, they will tend to help to accelerate the rate of growth. And when things come through on the other side, which of course is starting to happen now. So why is this so important? Well, I think why it's so important is if there's not a clear understanding of these numbers, the chances are you're probably targeting the wrong people. And if that's the case, you probably have got some resistance to pricing for your products and services. You may find that lots of your marketing efforts are wasted, and so on. And that's a really important figure to understand. And we'll be sharing some more insights about that shortly. There's also something else. If you're more of a coach, trainer, mentor, or consultant, or a small organization that's in those areas of operation, you've got the rule of 3/3. So you've got those. So, for example, let's say you're largely selling time for money. About a third of your time is spent prospecting and finding clients. About a third of your time is spent on self-development and dealing with void periods when perhaps it's a bit quiet for various reasons. And the other third is spent on fee-paying work. Okay. Now that in itself is quite significant. Okay, because that means if you're, which I'll come on to that part in a second, but if you to look at the number of working days in a year, give or take, there's 260 working days in a year. If you took off then 40 days for holiday, sickness, time with family, and so on, that reduces that down to about 220 days. Okay, so which are working days. So because you've got the rule of 3/3, you need to actually divide that number by 3. So that basically means if you want to earn, I'm making this up, but let's say you want to earn £100,000 or dollars per year, you actually would need to, you wouldn't divide that number by 220, you would actually divide it by 70. So 220 divided by 3 equals 70, give or take. So that means you need to make sure that you're offering lots of value in your service provision, but it far exceeds the equivalent of your daily rate are based on 70 days. Okay. Otherwise, what will happen is you're always going to be finding or reaching out to clients which can't afford your service provision or just won't pay appropriately for what you're providing. And you're always going to end up by perpetually struggling to get traction in the marketplace. So a really important point, that one. And the other thing, of course, you've got the usual situation about peaks and troughs. Now, forgetting about recessions and pandemics and all this type of stuff, what tends to happen as we get very busy, we'll take our natural human instinct is take our feet off the pedal, or foot off the pedal, I should say, and because we're oversubscribed. And then guess what? There's a massive trough that occurs perhaps 1 or 2 months later, and then people go much more into trying to build things up again. So you end up with these continual peaks and troughs. And of course, this point here about why is this so important, and be prepared for the unexpected. Now, those words actually were there in this presentation or variation of this presentation 2 or 3 years ago, but in reality, that's even more true now. It's just obviously we weren't expecting, that the COVID scenario to come along. But any business has also natural fluctuations, because you may have seasonality like Christmas or the summer holidays. It may be your products or services sell better in the winter time before Christmas than others. Others are more businesses which get higher sales in the summertime. The point I'm trying to make here is it's really important to smooth out these peaks and troughs. Okay, technically, if the pandemic hadn't come along, we would have been due probably for a recession around about now anyway, because typically they happen every 10 years, and the last one was about 2009, 2010. So obviously, if anything, that's made it a lot deeper this time around. On the other hand, we, as I think it's the Office of National Statistics and the government have indicated, are expected to come out of that very quickly. I think the Bank of England have said by the end of next year, the economy should be back up to where it was before the pandemic. So in other words, we'll have grown our way out of this current situation. So what that basically means for businesses now, especially for those who take an action, and ideally should have taken action a few months ago, we should be really starting to accelerate a way out of it, providing our businesses are resilient enough to be able to to do that. So we would recommend this, what we class as social selling blueprint, because if any one of these three cogs is not turning, about generating leads, nurturing prospects, and turning those sales-based opportunities, if any of those three are not turning for whatever reason, then clearly you're going to have a perpetual problem in your business. And we'll discuss strategies on how you can get that right. And that obviously is a large part of the elephant. And so it's very important to look outwards and look at how you can adapt and change. Obviously, when there is the fear of what's to come down the road, as it were, people have a natural reptilian response to that, is where we go into, especially us men, as far as that's concerned, we tend to go into our cave a little bit. So going back to perceived flight to safety, when in reality it's actually increasing the risk. And it's really important that we speak to our customers, prospects, and advocates, that we're very proactive. And of course, cash flow is king. At the end of the day, if business runs out of money, it's in trouble. I mean, you've got the difference between good money versus bad money. People may have a perception that good money is putting money into savings or keeping money in your bank account. And that is true to a certain extent, okay? And then there's bad money, okay? And bad money is spending things on parts which are not really going to underpin the support and growth of your business. So good money could be anything from investing in assets like a plant and machinery. It could be about investing in your own teams or your staff, or in training for your staff. It could also be investing in marketing, sales, business development. And that is actually an investment. Okay, it wouldn't be an accountant speaking account, because accountants would class that as possibly an overhead or direct, not cost of sale, but maybe a direct form of expenses. But I would argue that if a business doesn't invest properly in itself in those ways, if you don't have any sales coming through the door, if you haven't got a problem now with cash flow, you certainly will do in a few months' time. So it's very important to make sure you've got everything in place, to make sure you're growing and developing yourself personally, and also that you've got strategies for growth in the business, that you've got the clear implementation of what we class as social selling blueprint. And not everyone wants to scale their business. In fact, a lot of businesses which are run more as a lifestyle business, people can sometimes get uncomfortable with too much growth. So the scaling part isn't for everyone. But what I would say is, if you are wanting to have a bigger impact on the world, put things in place which will help you to grow and scale. And that's where you can have a bigger positive impact, if that's something that interests you. Then it's about looking at your customers, products, and markets. Okay. And then obviously we talked through this very briefly at the beginning. I'll be going into a little bit more detail about these 7 key systems for business growth. And let me just quickly pause for a second. Any of you who've just joined us recently, if you do say hello in the chat, it'd be lovely to hear from you. And also, you're very welcome if you would like to. So just put something in. If you've got a question you'd like to ask, just drop it in the chat. Or equally, if you'd like to join us into the green room, onto the live part of this here today, do just indicate it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we give you a chance to be fully involved and engage, as it were. So what we're going to look at first is your strategic guidance systems. And this is obviously everything revolves around the numbers in terms of what you're doing. And if you imagine someone flying a jet, might be, or an aircraft, at the end of the day, if they didn't have all their instrumentation, so they knew what height they were going, what speed they were going, what the altitude, all this type of stuff, obviously that plane would eventually crash. Okay, and so this instrumentation is vital. It's very much the same in business. If you don't know your key numbers in that business, obviously things are set to fail, as it were, on building on success. So one of the things we feel is really important is you have what we class as a one-page business dashboard in terms of being able to look at your key numbers. Also a one-page marketing dashboard. So that may be looking at everything you're planning to do to roll out through marketing, whether it's through direct mail, through the post, whether it's email, whether it's social media marketing, whatever it should be. You should know those key numbers which are relevant to drive it through. Then you've got your one-page sales dashboard. And ideally, you need to have all three parts of those in place to make sure that you're building your business on very solid foundations. And if we then look at the value brand optimization systems, just a few thoughts around this as well, which you may find really helpful. But what is your value brand proposition? And obviously everything starts from you or me personally. What we are personally very driven by. What's our desire? Do we have desire to have a bigger impact on the world and make a difference? If so, how does that reflect in our business values? And what do our customers really want? And what we want for our customers, is it actually well aligned for what they do actually need and what they care about? Okay. And also, are there any potential social causes you can get behind? So one of the really good things to look at is, if you look at the 17 global goals for the United Nations, if you have a look just look it up online, the 17 global goals on the United Nations, you invariably will probably find there's 2 or 3 of those 17 global goals, which perhaps are areas that you're personally very passionate about, and you feel you want to make a difference. Okay, so, and it's, if you can drive a business forwards with a real sense of social purpose, where you feel you are having a positive impact on the world, then clearly that's a really good thing. And people will buy into your authenticity when that happens as well. It is also about being a good tribe leader as well, because if people like what you have to share and the values that you project, then they'll want to potentially get behind you, and you're behind your mission and vision, but you've got to clearly articulate that. In fact, I think Anthony's on the call today. He's got one of his key things is around this whole value brand proposition. And that, I think if I got this right, that's not just in a direct internal business context, but it's actually working within leadership teams as well. So it's just worth bearing in mind. And then look at other people who might aspire to or have great massive respect for. So there's a gentleman here which you probably wouldn't know of, a guy called Neil Lawton. He's ex-Special Force. He's a serial adventurer. He's been up Everest, I think it's 5 or 6 times. Muriel, I've lost track. I think he's got a big mission. Actually, I think next year he's done something a bit different. But he's been up Everest 5 or 6 times. And the picture you can see on the top left, this one here, is with him, a picture with Bear Grylls. We interviewed him on the live stream about 6 months ago, and they staged a dinner party at 22,000 feet up on Everest. So quite brave to do that, I think. But obviously that's someone, started off very ordinary years ago. Obviously, over time, he's very perpetually has to be challenged. And I think it's over 52 or 50 expeditions he's done so far. And you've got another guy called Danny McCaskill. I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly. And there's some fantastic adrenaline-based footage, which you'll see on YouTube, which is basically him cycling down the slabs in the Isle of Skye. And just a bit of fun there. Now, he's someone very ordinary doing something amazing. You only need to look at what also people like Sir Tom did last year, and also Michael Rashford as well, and lots of other amazing people who perhaps very ordinary done something amazing. So we've all got it within us to do that, and I'm sure that we really value how people stick their necks out, potentially for others as well. And just a couple of examples around this, people who very much bought into our mission and vision, as it were. And we've got a lovely lady called Claire Burrows, runs a call centre in Southborough, and we helped to get 11 new clients over a period of 6 months. Adam Molson at the completely different end, because he with his team have created a really good proposition, which starts off at, believe it or not, about £300,000 and typically sells between 3 and 5 million. They'd created a technological solution which sits behind all the banking systems. I don't know whether you've noticed, but if you do an interbank transfer now, with so-called faster payments, it used to, about 2 or 3 years ago, take about 2 hours for the transaction to go through. And who remembers on the call when banks used to be happy with it taking 3 days, 3 working days? So we've gone from 3 working days to about 2 hours. And now, with most of the banks, they support so-called instant payments. A lot of the architecture that sits behind there has been developed by Form 3, and we've done a lot of work with them. And there's another guy, in fact, he's going to be on a live stream in the next few weeks. In fact, Muriel, you don't know this yet, actually, because I've not told you. I've only just spoken to Michael. But Michael Rommeling is going to be...
Good. Oh, good.
Yeah, he's going to be on our live stream in a few weeks' time. And interestingly enough, we helped him to get, I think it was about £160,000 worth of business over 10 months as a one-person business, which he was very happy with. And he's actually just recently sold his... No, he's kept his house, but he's rented it out, and he's just bought another boat. And he's just, when speaking to him today, he was just telling us he got caught up in the gales off the southwest coast of Scotland. So I think he's trying to have a bit of difficulty finding a safe mooring at the moment. But anyway, we won't go down that route. And then you've got this whole thing about your value brand optimization, as it were, which is really, what is your why, your story? What is your vision, business mission and purpose? Does that time with your teams and your staff? And what are your social values? And also, are they well aligned with the customers and the other way around? And is your business and market alignment correct? Is it all in place? And then what have you put in place to actually optimize that as well in terms of building collateral around the value that you share? And also, have you spoken to any of your customers and considered what you could put in place to enhance the reputation out there so people actually know what you're all about? It's no good these days hiding your light under a bushel. Now, that may be a very humble thing to do. And, of course, we probably look up to many people like that. But at the end of the day, if they don't know what you do, they probably won't buy from you. So it's just something to bear in mind. And then you've got this whole thing around what we class as brand amplification, okay? And we describe this as a system for reasons that have become quite apparent in a moment, but just let's look at a few things around that. So, and this obviously, once you start to become respected in the marketplace, once you start to get a bit of presence out there and get a bit known, it's about really trying to amplify everything you do. And that's not just, it's also looking very strategically at things like social media, content creation, things like this, for example, the mini conference we're doing now, or webinars, video and podcast content creation, how you're using email to reach your prospects. Obviously, you've got online networking groups. We'll go back to some of the face-to-face ones hopefully soon. Then you've got the blogs and other online sessions. And how have we been able to leverage technology to really get the message out there? The difficulty is a lot of people really struggle with this part because they may say, perhaps a little bit out of guilt more than anything else, because someone might tell them actually you need to put some posts and articles out there. The trouble is that's not really thinking very laterally about it, because you almost have to do much work to do that than if you were to actually do it on a much bigger scale and use technology and different mediums of communication to get that message out there in some form of where you can have a big impact. So be careful. The other thing to be careful of as well is on social media, for example, it's very easy to think if something is free that has to be better than something you're paying for. But just bear in mind, for example, on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Instagram, is something really free? In fact, really, you are the asset and the commodity, because it's without you or I as users of those platforms, there would be no market for a Facebook or Instagram, because they wouldn't be able to sell any advertising off the back of it. So it just happens that it's the advertisers that actually pay for the running of those communities. So, and you either, with these platforms, typically invest your time or invest your money or both. And the thing to bear in mind is, for example, you used to be able to put a lot of content on Facebook. 3 or 4 years ago, you would have got reasonable amounts of organic traction, because Facebook would see it as a way of keeping you on the platform. And that goes back to the fact that you're an asset. But these days, because Facebook is very oversubscribed with people who want to use their platform for advertising, you are the asset, and therefore they expect to also charge for us as potential customers of Facebook, i.e. people wanting to spend money. It's those people they want to give the leverage to. So you either do invest your money, or you invest your time, or you invest both. And remember, the other crucial thing around this is something's only free if you don't value your time. So just really think about that sentence there, because we're all guilty of it. We perhaps don't value our time the way we should, but that's actually really, really important to remember. So let's move on a little bit more. It's also about doing things in such a way you can leverage your marketing and sales efforts so that you can get your time back. And a really good example of this, I would have played this actually, but perhaps I won't for this afternoon, because I want to save time for people to ask questions as well. But if you go online and look up on YouTube, for example, repurposing content, video content, or words similar to that, there are loads of 2 to 5 minute clips. And if you watch those 2 to 5 minute video clips, you've got things like The Jungle Book and Winnie the Pooh. And there's, out of all the Disney films, for example, there's about 20 different films on there. And there's loads of the content has been repurposed. So if you actually look at this part here in The Jungle Book, where you've got this boy is about to jump, and then look at him over here, the background might be different, but the movements of the person or the boy are exactly the same. And there's loads and loads of other scenes like that. So, and because, obviously now we've got computers and things like that, which makes the job so much easier. But because all these, these films, the frames had to be drawn by hand, and if you've got 25 frames per second, you can very easily see over an hour and a half long film how many different scenes you need to sketch out. So even today, some of the most modern Disney films use a lot of repurposing out there. So there's nothing wrong with repurposing at all. It's just you've got to do it the right way, so it's all done very professionally. And so what we'll do is we look a little bit more at this. What we recommend you have put in place to really leverage these opportunities through is to start off with what we class as a video live stream, and you create video content. Ideally start with video, and that could be something like what we're doing today. You could create an interview session where you invite people in for a discussion, which is what we do every Thursday, for example. And the big thing with that is you can then broadcast that simultaneously over the different channels. So you like a LinkedIn Live, Facebook, or a Periscope, for example, and YouTube, of course. You can then take that content and turn that into a podcast, okay? And when it goes out over a podcast, you can send that out through 7 or 8 channels simultaneously, okay? So you're getting massive reach then. Now, so to bring it into context, what we do is when we do the video live streams every Thursday, we edit those down a little bit for repurposing. So an hour-long program may come down to about 45 minutes, okay? And when they rebroadcast that about 2 or 3 weeks later, okay? And that goes out to the same platforms again. And so you get double bubble just by that part alone, as well as the amplification through the different channels. And then what you do is you then do a little bit of editing, and then you put that out as a podcast, perhaps a week or 2 after that. And then what you can also do is to leverage Facebook and Instagram to get that message out there. Excuse me a second. It's trouble when you do a lot of talking, you see, it catches up with you. Imagine what my poor wife feels as well. So, and then of course, what you can then do is that from that original content, you can repurpose it again, and you can turn that into a white paper, a downloadable report, even potentially the basic beginnings of a book. Okay, and what you can then do is to say, okay, let's create 5 or 6 posts or articles from that content. So do you see what I mean here? What you've done is you started off with one piece of content, and you've actually used technology to actually leverage that and leverage it again. So what you can then do, of course, is to say, now this is probably, you probably re-record this in fairness, but you may want to then create an on-demand webinar. So, for example, what we find, these mini conferences, you'll plan these things quite a bit in advance. In real terms, as a rough guide, if you get, if, for example, you're running a live event and it was a free event and you were expecting 50 people registered, if it's free, you probably would get about 50 or 60% people show. So you get about a 40% dropout rate. If you put a small price to it, obviously the numbers are going to be a lot less there. But in that type of scenario, you probably find the show-up rate might be 75 to 95%. Okay, so even paying a small amount makes a big difference. Then, but on the other hand, you also want to make it really easy for people. So where on-demand webinars work really well is, for example, you're giving more choice to the potential user. You're saying, well, look, we've got like a cut-down version of what we might do as part of a mini conference, which we've made available for you to watch on demand, and you still have the as live type of experience with the way technology is advanced now. And that, therefore, it makes it really easy for people to engage with. That ties in really well. The next thing is, okay, you say, well, right, I've created all this on-demand content. How will that integrate with my CRM solution? And what tools do I need to use as system integration tools so that all these elements tie together? And then what is the optimized online sales process? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there generally are teaching old stuff. So they themselves have been on a training program. They're perhaps repurposing that content, perhaps claiming it as being their own. I'm not saying it's blatantly, it's quite blatant as that, but it does happen. And what, because if something was developed 3 or 4 years ago, is potentially not right now. So we only look at what's happened over since March last year. For example, we were running a lot of physical events in February, March last year, and we had to cancel our last big one in March, which was in association with a big bank. Because of COVID, obviously the facilities got closed down. Fortunately, we were doing quite a bit online anyway before, so for us it was a relatively easy transition. But as we start to come out of what we're in now, everything will start to move more to hybrid events. So some people will choose they prefer to do things online. Others would prefer to go back to taking part in physical events. Okay, so this is where, and the nurturing process for each is very different. So, for example, if someone registers for an on-demand webinar, it may well be that you may have a different messaging process to take care of those versus if they were attending an online event or some form of workshop. Okay, and we discuss all the different strategies that are relevant for that, and then also how you can use diagnostic scorecards not to actually share masses of value with your prospects, so that when they get to speak to you, they've actually got some real value back. And also it helps you in your discussions with those potential customers because you understand what they need and what they want. It just accelerates the whole process and makes everything so much easier. So I feel I've raced ahead a little bit. Please do interact and ask questions. Don't be backwards in coming forwards. We actually do love to answer questions. And let's look a little bit more. So just because I'm talking about something now, by the way, just ask questions as they come into your front of mind, as it were. If I don't get around to answering it straight away, it's not because I'm not ignoring you, but it's just every 10 minutes I'll look at the chat, and Muriel's keeping an eye on things behind the scenes as well, so make sure everything's working the way it should. And we're here to support you in everything that's being done. So if we look at this whole thing around the social selling blueprint, and first of all, as well, we'll look at some of the other parts. You might say, well, why is your balanced product portfolio, your marketing mix, part of the social selling blueprint? Well, the bottom line is that at the end of the day, if your marketing mix isn't correct, you're always going to struggle to get traction in the marketplace. If you don't have a balanced product portfolio, then you could well be underselling what you have to your clients or overselling it. And you're not, ideally, you want to make it easy for people to buy from you as well. So let's look at this as a case in point. If we look at your products as a case in point, you need to make sure you've got a clear understanding of your product pricing, where that stands, and also your product positioning. And sorry to use this analogy because I think I used it last time, but so I don't know how many of you joined us previously. Probably not. I think it's maybe your first time. In fact, tell us in the chat if it's your first time or whether you've been joined one of these mini conferences before. We're really interested to know. But for example, if you look at product positioning, price itself can actually help you to position your product. So let's take BMW, for example. If BMW started to discount their cars by 40% as part of a promotion, what would that do to the brand? Ironically enough, it probably would do a lot of harm to the brand because people see price to a degree as being an anchor point of value. It's bizarre, I know. Equally, if you sold it too high, then you're perhaps then competing with a different brand, which might be Mercedes, if you feel they're better, or it might be a Rolls-Royce or an Aston Martin or whatever it may be. And if you get that wrong again, then that can impact how people perceive you. Research is really important. Now, obviously, market research generally we'd recommend, but you can do it very simply as well. First of all, by going out to your own customers and ask them what they think. And for example, we added a new element to the service in January this year, which is based under the brand amplification part. But before we launched that, we actually went out to our existing members, our existing customers, and said, look, we'd like to invite you to this special closed focus group. Would you like to join us? And they actually told us exactly what they wanted. And we made sure we delivered to market what people were asking for. So that research can be as simple as that. Obviously, one of the true tests is whether people will get their money out of their pockets and spend it with you. If that's about the best R&D you can get in many ways, then you've got your product position. What does that comprise of? And then your product desirability, how does it stand up against the competition? And what is your product mix? And I'll come on to that more in just a second. So if you look at just us as a case in point, and this is only representative of ourselves, of course, but our balanced product portfolio, we have a balance. Products are prospects, which is free, is what you're joining in today. We also have the live streams, which are every Thursday at 5 o'clock or 5 to 5 till 6. We also have lots of video-based content on our website, which is available for free. And then we have a foundation product, which is what we class as a downloadable book and access to a video interview. Now, if people want the physical book, we charge a very normal amount. It might be like, £5 or £10, for example, in which case they get the interview as part of that for free. In other cases, we don't charge at all, but it may be done as a downloadable a book instead. And that means because we got no cost of shipping and production, so we have got production costs, but we don't have printing costs, then obviously we take the view we could pass those savings on to customers. Now, a foundation product typically wouldn't be a free proposition, by the way. It would be an entry point to your core provision. And the price of that is going to vary dramatically according to what your core product service provisions actually cost. So for example, if your core products sell for, making this up, say £10,000 or dollars or £50,000 or dollars, it may be your foundation products are, could be £1,000 or £2,000 or dollars. Whereas if your core proposition was, say, £1,000 or dollars, it may be your foundation products like £5, £10, $20, £50. Okay, so it's all relative. So interesting enough, if you took Form 3, we were referring to earlier on, the core proposition was between £3 and £5 million. Okay, their foundation products, now admittedly it was probably a bit more staged than this, but it was really a £200,000 or £300,000 proposition. Now they probably have something a bit lower than that as well, That in reality, in order to make sure, it's like almost a bit of a scope of works in a sense, those clients were expected to pay for that part of it because it required massive investments of time and people resource working with different heads of department to close those down. So the core product would be really your cash cow. It's what products you sell which provide the bulk of the revenue into your business. And then your products for upsells and cross-sells would be those which may be a variation of your foundational core products, but particularly developed for your existing customers, and also as member-get-member offers. So a member-get-member offer is where, one company or one person recommends someone else in another company. And the ideal scenario you do is you make sure the person who's being referred in gets some special deal or gets some special terms. And the referrer may well receive some form of revenue share, or may say, well, look, don't give me the money, but donate money to charity. And that's like a member-get-member offer. Where I have a bit of a problem with some of this is if people feel they should charge people who've been referred in a higher price they would have paid otherwise. I would argue it should only be a bit the other way around, that you reward the person that's been referred as well with some form of special special saving or something to make them feel very special about the relationship. So an accountant might regard your spend on that as being overhead. We argue that that type of scenario would be a marketing cost, okay? Because, or almost, I'd go possibly even further, it is potentially part of your cost of sale, okay? So especially if it's a revenue share, that would class as a cost of sale, okay? And the reason I particularly highlight that is that it goes back to this thing, you need to make sure that the people who are being referred in are very well looked after, because obviously that's a reflection on, someone's being nice enough to give a recommendation. That needs to be respected in the value that you're offering or sharing. So just wait a second, I've lost exactly where I am now. So moving on a little bit now. So this is around your markets and marketing mix. And that's really around your awareness, your ideal clients, your competition, your differentiation, and your positioning, okay? And why is this so important? Again, well, the bottom line is you don't really move forwards by looking in your rear view mirror, okay? So you need to be really clear on what your marketing mix is and what it should comprise of. And hopefully as part of today's session, and if you join us on Thursday as well, that'll give some more insights. So if you do things the right way, what we can share with you, so from every 100 cold leads that are reached out to, you should be able to attract 10 hot prospects in your chosen target market. And we can also show you a way of doing this without spending any money at all on pay-per-click. And you can increase your profits by attracting higher value clients. And you could leverage your time so you can get more billable work. So, and very importantly, you can build scale into your business if you get this right. And these are the type of things that we're very keen to share with people. So, moving on a little bit more from that, the other thing to understand is the importance of what we class as a snowball effect. So, so for example, I don't know whether any of you followed this. In fact, we're having some debates internally about this. Muriel and I are having a debate about this altogether. There's probably been a lot of hype in the media about cryptocurrencies. And if we just, Muriel, could you just join us for a second? Actually, I want to have a bit of fun with you around this particular point. So, Muriel, completely off script here, but there's a particular cryptocurrency which is called, is it Dogecoin, Muriel?
Doji.
Doji, yes. Now, yes. Now, basically, I think Elon Musk and there's one or two others have got behind it as well. And basically, this cryptocurrency being created out of nothing. Obviously, it's based on blockchain and everything else like that. So it's built on solid foundations. But actually, it's basically plugged into the emotional aspect of making a decision. And it was seen as very much anti-establishment at the time. And so, of course, a lot of younger people got behind it as well. But this Dogecoin has taken off in a massive way, and it's actually valued more than the Ford Motor Company now. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's only existed for a few months. The worst thing is that it's actually, be careful what I say because someone might sue me for it, but it's actually built on hot air, almost literally, because unlike the other cryptocurrencies, or the vast majority of them, a lot of those, there's very good economic reasons or very good reasons as to why cryptocurrency can be very good for enabling payments. Okay, so it's still much speculative. But if you were to look at the Dogecoin and look at the value of what it was perhaps 3 months ago, look at the value now, you'd be really surprised. Okay, now even that has taken time for the snowball effect to actually kick in. Okay, in effect, the same is true with marketing, except we're not building it on hot air. We're building on solid foundations here. You need to give time for any campaigns to come out, whether it's a pay-per-click campaign or whether you're using Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. It's very important to allow that time. And also bear in mind, just because we want to sell our product, service, or widget right now, doesn't mean to say the customer is ready at that point to actually buy. So you have to have a process which makes sure people, once they're in the EU ecosystem, feel they've been looked after. So anyway, if nothing else, you'll probably remember this session today about the conversation about Dogecoin. So
and it's doing well today.
Yeah, Muriel, how much has it gone off the last a week or something?
Quite a bit.
Yeah, with something like that, by the way, this I'm not having a knock at cryptocurrencies, because I think actually for certain countries, you just look in the Western style economies, you look at other countries, possibly like Africa and others, where the banking system is not very sophisticated at all. Or, you look at Turkey, where they've perhaps had a little bit of a run on their currency, and people are concerned about the value of their money being depreciated. You can see why people have chosen to put money in crypto coins. But the thing with something like this, you have to build on really solid foundations. So if you were to go for a Dogecoin, by the way, just see it as a punt. It has to be money you can lose as well, because it definitely is a bit of fun and a punt, nothing else. Okay, so anyway, we'll change the subject back to the point of this presentation today. So right, so moving on a little bit from there. Any comments, by the way? Do interact. It can. We want to have fun today, so we do want you to tell us exactly what you feel and what you think about all this. So let's look at the next part of this. Obviously, everything we talk about here is about you to bring yourselves forward, amplify your brand, and get your time back. And we've got a really good solution which helps you with that, which is called BizGrowth Time Machine. And this is a bit of a play on Back to the Future. I probably noticed some play on the words here. But basically, if you can use technology to really leverage time, but crucially with you in full control, and it saves you having to pay for pay-per-click, then really that is a good thing, because one of the big challenges, if you run campaigns manually, so on LinkedIn as a case in point, to run a full campaign manually on LinkedIn, I'm talking about direct personal outreach on LinkedIn, by the way, not content and article writing here, you'd be spending, and I'm not exaggerating here, 3 to 5 hours a day to run your campaigns at maximum performance available on the platform. Now, you might think it's an exaggeration, but just imagine the whole nurturing process that goes on to have those type of conversations. What we basically have been able to do is put the power back in your hands, give you the technology, so you're in the driver's seat. So imagine you've got your nice BMW or a Tesla or Mercedes, or it could be a Fiat Panda. I don't really mind, but imagine you got your really nice car, as it were, and but you got your radar control, your sat nav, you got your automated braking, your adaptive speed control, and all this type of stuff. Now we're not quite into the area of autonomous driving just yet, and not far off, but not just yet. But in effect, what we're saying is, if you put a postcode in the sat nav, even if you go wrong a few times on route, it'll always get you to your destination. Okay. But these days, obviously, vehicles have got so sophisticated. What it means effectively is you can almost be in the driver's seat these days if you're on a motorway. And a lot of the time, these more expensive vehicles are almost able to drive themselves. You've just got to make sure your feet is near the brakes and, well, not even on the accelerator necessarily these days, but you're actually able to steer the car and take action if you need to do so. And the same thing here is what we're saying. It's really important you retain control. So you're using technology to leverage your efforts, but you're in the driver's seat. So you can stop and start and change direction as much as you like. And the His Growth Time Machine will allow you to do that. And typically the efficiency gains are between 10 to 15 times. So you're reducing a 3 to 5 hour job typically to about 15 minutes a day. And that's mainly replying to personal messages where people want interaction. Okay. So the other part as well, now this is a bit subject to GDPR compliance, but in a business to business context, and I'm talking about UK regulations here, and it's obviously varies a bit in Europe, and it varies even more in the US and the other way around. Basically, as part of this, it also builds your email list at the same time. So once you've started engaging with people, typically in about 75% of cases, it will find that person's business email address and their business phone number as well. So it's really, really powerful in terms of being able to give you lots of leveraged results, leveraged opportunities. So this is using Business Growth Time Machine, and all being well, I should be able to give you like a 7 or 8 minute demo within the time we've got available to this afternoon. And so let's look at this a little bit more, the social selling blueprint. So what we tend to do with these to make sure everyone's brought up to the correct level, we feel it's very important people do get personal attention. So obviously I'm involved. Muriel spends a lot of time with our clients on a one-to-one basis, but this is also backed by group-based sessions as well. Plus, we also give you access to a social selling blueprint web portal, and in particular, we work with you to help you to understand your markets and marketing mix and your LinkedIn strategies with Time Machine. We give you lots of training about how to use Sales Navigator and so on, and tools like that, and also help you to look at your balanced product portfolio. And that's very important for any of this to work well, okay? And so let's look at the lead generation efforts. So this is a little bit of a graphic. Now this is aimed at businesses which are a little bit larger, but in reality, if you're the sole person in the business, you're also having to act as sales director, managing director, partner, owner, and everything else. So you have to wear multiple hats. So this graphic still applies to you, okay? But if, for example, you're working with cold leads, you may be spending 65% of your time, so 25 plus 40%, actually working with cold leads. And worse than that, what you'll find is there's massive time costs with that. If you're actually paying for a business development resource or a sales director, for example, what's it really costing your business? By the time you've trained that person up, by the time you've paid fees to a recruitment agency or those adverts, by the time you've trained that resource up and so on, what will happen is people very quickly get demoralized. They go and leave, and then the company underperforms as well. Whereas if you look at the new way of doing things, you should be able to work at between 55 and 65% of those people are either asking for more information to have sales-based conversations. And as a result, you're going to get a much better return on investment. Your business development managers will be overperforming their targets. You'll have much higher rates of staff retention, and generally it'd be a much nicer role for them to be in. So obviously, there is a place for approaching people cold, but if you can warm people up so they're ready and expecting to have that conversation, it makes things so much better. And if you look at also the opportunities that we generate for ourselves, and there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be the same for you. And now we do have an email list of a business email list of 58,000 businesses in the UK, actually some of the US as well and other countries, out of which 13,000 are what we regard as being in the middle to top tier in terms of quality, as it were. That accounts for 25% of all the new business that we get in. We do get a little bit of business from Facebook and Instagram. Now that will probably increase a bit over time as we do some other things, but we mainly use Facebook and Instagram for retargeting, not direct advertising. And referrals would normally be a lot higher as a percentage than that, but because the other LinkedIn email dwarfs it, it's also not showing as a high percentage here. But look at this, 61% of our business comes from LinkedIn, 61%. And that's without doing any pay-per-click advertising whatsoever. Okay. And not only that, not only we found some really good clients through LinkedIn, we got some lovely people we're working with, but also we've developed some really good partnerships. So, for example, Chris Cooper, he runs this radio show. He's become also a good friend of ours as well. If you look at Karen Davies through LinkedIn again, if you look at Alex Reardon, I met him through LinkedIn. So it's really good for forming partnerships as well, people that you want to work with. Equally, it's good for finding sponsors, which I'll come to a bit later. It's also very good for finding wholesalers and distributors too. So just bear that in mind. These days, especially if you're in the business to business or business to charity space, or even if you're in the B2C space, business to consumer, because we all individually buy things. We're all people as individuals who will perhaps get married. We may have parties. We may have 25th wedding anniversary parties and so on. So there's lots which of those people you'd find on LinkedIn as well, believe it or not. So moving on a little bit from there, let's also look at some of the power of what you can do. So it's very important to start by looking at your demographic data as well as your psychographic data. And I'll do a little bit more on this afternoon. There'll be a follow-up session on Thursday, as I say. But try and think about the ideal avatar for your ideal clients. So if you look at LinkedIn as a case point, there's 147 industry classifications. And in the case of LinkedIn, probably about 110 of those are very good on the platform. The other 37 sectors or so are not so good because it might be the police, the judiciary, or the armed forces, for example. And naturally, people in that space tend to be a little bit more discreet about their online presence for understandable reasons. And it's about making sure that there's a really good fit there as well. Now, interestingly enough, you've got, presumably you've heard of SIC codes. SIC codes are still used today. If you go onto the Companies House website, every business is classified by an SIC code. But the trouble is, SIC codes are not really fit for purpose anymore. They were created in the 1940s and 1950s, a lot of them. And of course, you didn't have the internet then, let alone many other sectors. So yes, they've tried to adapt it, but in real terms, the actual industry classifications on LinkedIn are good. And if you look at also Facebook and Instagram as well, on LinkedIn generally is better for searching for demographic data. Facebook is generally better searching for psychographic data. Okay, so and in both cases you have to be a little bit imaginative in terms of determining who is best to speak to. Okay, so if you were to look at options about generating leads around Google, Facebook, Instagram, and so on, and obviously what we'll do as part of this about bringing leads is we'll cover why LinkedIn should feature so highly in terms of increasing your lead flow and sales-based opportunities. And as I say, the advanced session on LinkedIn will be on Thursday. If you did register today, as you register today, and if you can't make Thursday, we will make a recording available for you as well. So see that as being a little bit of a bonus. But if you can join us on Thursday, we get a bit of a different crowd on Thursdays because they tend to be our regular ones, plus a few new ones coming in as well. But you get lots out of that. So what is really important is you can try and keep your hard-earned cash in your pocket. And there's no advertising to pay for here on LinkedIn, Google, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter. And we could show you how, apart from having to invest, $75 or about £60 a month on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, how you can reach people directly in your chosen target markets. And also bear in mind, if you're using say Google pay-per-click as a case in point, or Facebook, for example, remember a click is just a click. That's all it is. And there are also multiple points of failure. So a lot of people don't realize this, but if you do a Google AdWords campaign, okay, what you would obviously base out of key phrases or keywords, both in terms of the search, but the words you put into the advert, okay. What you'd find is that you'd also, Google these days like to have personalized landing pages according to the key phrase keywords. And so in 15 years ago or 10 years ago, you'd be able to get away with one landing page. These days, you might have to have 10 or 15 different landing pages which are highly optimized for the keywords or key phrase. Now, you can get away with one still, but Google will actually effectively penalize you because every page on a website is page ranked. And if you're advertising, if your advert appears to be exactly in line with the key phrase or keywords, you'll find not only will you get more traffic to that advert, but also the other thing is that you will get it at lower cost. And there's new things coming along with Google search as well, is that they're looking a lot more at the overall user experience on websites. They're also looking at speed load times as well. So WordPress is great for many websites, but some of the pages can be a bit slow to load, and that is measured by Google as well. So you can pay more for the privilege of having slow page load time. So to you and I, they may look fast when we're especially on a desktop or a laptop computer, but when you're running on a mobile phone over the 3G network, for example, you find this, especially if you at peak times, then you can find that it can be slow, and Google actually, you end up paying more for it. So now, why does this matter so much? Because when you look at the cost of each customer acquisition, it's not just things like your landing page. It's also when people get to your landing page, what do they do next? What percentage of those of people actually go and opt into something? If they don't opt in, it's much more difficult to follow them up because you don't know who they are. And interestingly enough, it's got a lot more difficult just in the last week or so. And I don't know if you've seen this through any of the announcements online, but you've got Apple iOS 14 and also the European Union as well as bringing strict regulations about privacy as well. So, for example, a lot of the tracking that you used to be able to do is being by default disabled when people go through to websites, unless people go into their security settings in the iOS app and change their settings. And to be frank, probably 90%, 95% of people will never change their settings. So effectively, there is something called Google and Facebook, for that matter, Pixels, and also to get the same on LinkedIn. That's very good for retargeting. But that's now been made much more difficult by this change in just the last week. I think it was the 26th of April it changed. So people are having to change their advertising strategies because of this. So if you get this wrong, you can be literally pouring money down the drain. Now, on the plus side, there is a good way of doing this and creating a lot more certainty. And that's what we sort of plan to cover as part of this. So under the prospect nurturing side, Muriel, am I missing any chat there? Or if anyone's got any questions, do shout out. So I think I can see Muriel behind the scenes here nodding her head, so it's all in check. So that's absolutely fine. But do come forward with your questions. Don't be shy, as it were. And we're going to look at the prospect nurturing part now. So this is, we talked quite a bit about the lead generation here. And the crucial thing as well, if you go use LinkedIn as a case in point, you get a very good tool in the toolbox. If you don't mind spending your £60 per month, give or take, on Sales Navigator, you've got very, very powerful search in there. So you can search by level of seniority, industry sector. You can search by, can't search by age, but there are some terms you can search for which give you an indication of age, like years of experience. You can also do key phrase search as well, number of employees. You can also filter by turnover as well. Now that's a really big one, actually. Number of employees is a good indicator, but not as good as you would think, because a lot of people beef themselves up to pretend they're bigger than they are. So obviously LinkedIn can only report on what information's been put in, because it's relying on a certain amount of honesty. But the one that's been added recently is this one being able to filter by turnover. So bear in mind that only about 5% or so of businesses employ more than 10 people, it's 11 people or more in the UK. If you get your marketing wrong, then of course that could be costing you big time. So being able to target people in the right way is really important. So if you do this the right way, for every 100 people you reach out to, 10 should become hot prospects. And it's about having a really good nurturing process. So on Thursday, we'll go into a lot more detail about this, but it's about having the right type of connection message, thanking people for accepting the request. This is based on you targeting people in the right way, getting that right, which would show you how, by the way, as part of the training with us. Also, going with asking a qualifying question as part of your next message, then having what we class as a qualifying pitch message where value is shared, and then you may go further in with another question, and then if you use a diagnostic, or it might be a webinar, whatever you do, it might be sharing value. You can invite people to complete a diagnostic health check, and of course perhaps invite them to a discovery call. Now that might be an example of a really good 7-step prospect nurturing process. Now the crucial thing around that is to make sure your profile as well is really well optimized on LinkedIn. And again, that'll be covered on Thursday, because if you don't get that right, it means it's a bit like having a car again, sorry to use that analogy, where you've got high performance engine in the car, but you're using the wrong grade of petrol in it. Okay, so what that means, your cars are always going to be underperforming. So you need to make sure all these parts are in sync, and we can show you how. And we're now going to look at the whole sales optimization part, and this goes back to knowing your numbers as well. So it's about understanding. In fact, I think Anthony and a few others on this call today I've spoken with before, and you'll notice that when I've spoken with you individually, one of the things I've drilled down a lot on is your average value of a customer. Okay, because that then ties in with the rest of the information about knowing your numbers. So let's say you're a software as a SaaS tech company, or a software technology company, or an accountant, or you might be offering some form of professional services based on a monthly fee, or it could be on a project basis as well. So the same principles apply. It's just you look at over 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. So if your average value of sale in the first year is say 10K, and the same clients are worth 25K over 3 years, and the same clients again are worth 35,000 over 5 years, and let's say you wanted to have 3 sales extra per month. Well, over 1 year, a 1 year campaign would generate you £360,000 worth of revenue based on these numbers. If it's over 5 years, the same people again. Okay, so it's based on a 12-month period, but based on the value of those customers over 3 years, that's £900,000 or dollars of revenue. And the same thing applies in 5 years, it's 1.26 million. Now, if you don't believe me on these figures, it's a little bit complex, not too complex, but work it out on a calculator, you'd find the numbers would come out, give or take, being exactly the same. And obviously, as far as your business is concerned, you just change those numbers to suit. So why is that important? Because this goes back to the targeting of your customers as well. So the other thing is when people do want to speak with you, this goes back to sharing value. Okay, so if you haven't completed the sales and marketing diagnostic already, we will invite you to do that at the end if you haven't done it already. But if you can find a way of asking your prospects to complete some form of sales and marketing diagnostics, so you're sharing massive amounts of value with them. In our case, we share an 8-page personalized report. Or equally, if you can find ways of sharing some other content that's related to their responses, then that's really good. And then, of course, as part of that, you can implement something very similar for yourself. And that means as well, when you're speaking to people, you're making sure you're prepared before that conversation and the right people are speaking to them as well. So that's good to understand. And then you've also got this, what we class the sales optimization side. Just wait a second, have a sip of water, wait a moment. Sorry about that. So, right. The prospects, qualification, diagnostics that we've already talked about. It's also, what have you put in place in terms of a value, a share, a test drive, and so on. And also, what qualification techniques you put in place to make sure there's a really good fit. Okay, and then if you could put that in place, when you do have those conversations with people, you've got a much better chance of actually closing those opportunities down. So if you move a bit more onto the client enhancement side, so let's look at this part here. It's about surprising and delighting people so people want to refer to you. Okay, it's about being able to scrum. Now, this picture was actually taken in February last year. It was a particular street in London. There was about 4 or 5 coffee shops, all within 50 yards, 100 yards of this particular place. and they're all virtually empty. And if you look at this picture here, there's a queue outside and people having to wait half an hour, 45 minutes to get in. And what they've done is they've created a whole experience over having your tea, coffees, cakes, all this type of stuff. And obviously the tables are nicely spaced out. If you look in there, there's what looks like these floating mushrooms inside, and so on. What would happen if people compromised on the quality of that part of it? It's about surprising and delighting people. So every time, and as a consequence, people then refer to other people. So what can you do in your business to do the same? And a very good example of someone here who likes to surprise and delight. This is Anthony and Don. They run a facilities management company in Beckenham, Kent. And they've got a team of about 5 or 6 people internally in the office, plus have about 100 contractors that work with them as well. And this was pre-COVID. And we've had great pleasure working with these guys when this picture was taken anyway. We first of all worked at a bit of a personal level because they're both joint managing directors, as it were, in this business. And the one was going in a slightly different direction to the other. And we sort of worked with them to help them a little bit with that, but also help them to put in place strategies to really improve their lead flow of opportunities. And of course, they had to considerably adapt their model in March last year, when of course things changed because of what we've all had to live through. But lovely people, and it's delighted to have them within our community. And this also goes back under the client enhancement part, the whole tribe part, making everyone feel important, is also ties this very well here, because if people do like you and what you do and how you help other customers, they'll recommend other people into you by default. Okay, and there's also strategies we can recommend you put in place to make a difference there. So it's about surprising, delighting, creating raving fans, and having the perfect upsell, cross-sell opportunities, and member-get-member offers, and also have a really good referral system. So just a little bit of a story around it, because I think people relate to stories. Muriel will remember that, when I ran a previous business, which was a bit of a different field altogether, but we had about 3,000 active referrers of people passing potential clients through to us. We also formed 6 major partnerships, which include people like a Direct Line, Sainsbury's Pet Insurance, I'm trying to forget it's Direct Line, Sainsbury's Pet Insurance, More Than, and then shortly after that, Tesco's came on board as well, more on the insurance side as well. And over any one month, we're having to handle over 20,000. That's 20,000 phone calls per month from people who actually were interacting with our service. Now, we obviously use lots of very strong promotional activities to do that, but a lot of that also came from our network of active referrers. So it's about surprising and delighting people. Now, it's obviously a very different business, but nevertheless, the principles still stand. They're still the same. So it is about having your optimized systems of business growth. If you put things in place, what you can put in place is a very strong engine for growth. And there are some important considerations. We are doing pretty well for time, by the way, actually. So we should be done by about 5 o'clock, or possibly a little bit before. And that's allowing for a little bit of a demo. But do ask your questions. Don't be backwards and coming forwards. Now, a bit more on the numbers here. Okay, we talked about this a little bit already. But let's say your business is turning over £250,000 or dollars. You want to get it to £400,000 or dollars. Every month that you delay taking some form of action is actually costing you, in that example, £12,500 or dollars. Okay, so that's assuming that nothing else changes other than your turnover. Okay, and obviously in this case, is it a case that everything stays the same? Okay, the bottom line is we're certainly living on the hamster wheel if we take no action. But actually, the real cost of that is much, much greater than that, because if you took the same 250,000 up here, we've already established that's a £12,500 lost opportunity cost by delaying and taking action. But if, for example, you took no action, let's take a scenario over the last 12 months or so. If you took no action, what would happen is not only would you lose those new sales coming through the door, but your turnover would probably very easily drop by at least 35%, if not more. In fact, there's many people I've spoken to in the last few months where that figure is grossly underestimated. Now, a lot of businesses in that scenario would actually collapse. They just would not last. So the lost opportunity cost by taking no action is actually not £12,500 per month. It's actually £19,375 per month. And again, get your calculator, work it all out. I promise you that figure is accurate to the penny. It's just a pure mathematical equation. Okay, so the perception of risk by taking maybe that you're saving money or everything else, but actually your perceived risk is actually lower by not spending money. But I would actually argue you're actually increasing potentially your risk of things going wrong because of these figures as they show here. So in times of massive disruption, you may want to consider how you can adapt to the new market and what you can put in place with business growth in mind. Understand the importance of building tribes, how you can have a well-oiled marketing and sales-based machine, and reflect on what may break you as well as scale you or make you. And obviously not everyone wants scale, but at least if you want to get things back to some sense of normality, again, for yourselves, what can you put things in place to give you that lifestyle that you want for yourselves and for your family? And look at what you can do once and use technology to dramatically increase your reach and sales and lower your costs. And ultimately, we're here to help you with your planned growth. And this lovely lady here called Lorna Leonard is a case in point. She was an interim financial director, or still is. Within 10 days' work, she actually managed to pick up a 30K contract. And she's a lovely lady, but she's a real introvert. So sales is the complete opposite to what she loves doing. So we actually really helped with that. Now, this isn't related to sales at all per se, but just to give a real sense of the type of organization we work with, I happen to know the CEO of PayPal Giving, which is a charitable arm of PayPal Giving, and they entrusted us with their data. This is the charitable data to actually enrich and cleanse, and that so meant doing multiple searches across Google, Companies House, the Charity Commission website, and then giving that data back again, all nicely cleaned up. And we did that work from both in the UK, but also Australia as well. So that was lovely. And then Susannah Schofield, OBE, we ran some strong campaigns for her. And the Jubilee Sailing Trust, lovely charity, which works with children and adults with disabilities. We've helped them to raise £270,000 worth of sponsorship and also private charters for their ships, which enables them to carry on their excellent work that they do with adults and children that have got disabilities. So LinkedIn can be a really, really good place in all sorts of scenarios. Now, there obviously are a few exceptions, but if we're a bit concerned about that, we'll always be very open and honest with you so you know. And so if you do want more leads and more sales-based opportunities, then it really is a case of what you can put in place so you've got a well-oiled sales machine. And just a little bit of repetition, bear in mind what we've talked about already, that if something's free, you are the asset and the commodity, okay, to that company is offering something free. On these platforms, you either invest your time or you invest money or you invest both. And obviously go back to this thing again. If you try and do all this yourself, remember something, it's only free if you don't value your time. And that's particularly relevant if you're in a business where you're selling your services in different shapes or form. And really is about leverage your marketing efforts. And why consider LinkedIn? Now, don't get me wrong, we do Facebook and Instagram and the others are very important. They have their place. And if someone wants to have help with Facebook and Instagram or YouTube marketing as a case in point, we've also got one or two partners who work very closely under this framework that we can plug you into. So they follow the same methodologies, but in the context of making sure you get optimized results through those other platforms. But if we look at LinkedIn as a case in point, there's 675 million users worldwide on LinkedIn alone, of which there's 25 million or so in the UK alone. Okay, it is the #1 business professional social network. The other ones are aimed more at individual consumers. the average person on LinkedIn earns way more than the national average wage because they tend to be a bit more senior, they tend to be much bigger spenders. And businesses say that 80% of their social media leads come from LinkedIn. Obviously, that is businesses, is a case point, and it can work in the business to consumer space, particularly if you've got a product which we all spend and buy. And it doesn't have to be a low cost proposition. We've got a lovely lady we've done a lot of work for previously, and she specialized in Arabian tents. And these 4-day hires were typically about £10,000. And when you do a 4-day hire with her, you're not just buying you're buying the whole experience. So it's a very high quality tent or marquee with oriental rugs, oriental furniture, nice comfy set of sofas with cushions, nice lighting. You're buying the whole experience. So they use, for example, for wrap parties, for example, I think Tom Cruise was one of her clients, not to us, I have to say, but in fact, ironically enough, a film that our son was involved with about 13, 14 years ago. That we found out years later this company actually provided the marquee for the wrap party, which is a bit of fun. So why did I mention this? Well, the reach on LinkedIn is pretty amazing, and so even if you've got a very modest 400 connections on LinkedIn, your reach, give or take, is about 60 million people. Okay, now of course LinkedIn never going to give you access to 60 million people, but by using Sales Navigator with very powerful search tools in there, and if we show you how to create those lists, then you can get some really nice honed results, and you can then target those for being potential clients. If you've actually got, say, 2,500 connections on LinkedIn, and I know many people do have that number, or certainly perhaps 1,000 or so. If it's 2,500, you've got access to nearly a third of the LinkedIn network, believe it or not, as in small segments of it. Equally, if you've got 5,000 connections, now that seems like a lot, but several of our clients have got way more than 5,000, as well as a lot of others just starting out. And you've got reach of probably about 3/4 of the LinkedIn network. So it actually goes up almost exponentially, because bear in mind, you can reach out to people's second and third level connections, albeit very highly targeted. So just a quick reminder of this. I've mentioned this earlier on, so I won't repeat it again. And also just a very quick reminder of some other companies we've served or are serving. And the reason I show you this is not only just to reassure you a little bit that you're working with an organization that's got a lot of credibility experience, but if you look there, we've broken people down into different sectors: financial services, insurance, business services, legal and accounting, coaching, consulting, technology and software companies, charities, events and hospitality, and there's a lot more beside. In fact, one of our clients actually, this is why it's interestingly perked up over cryptocurrencies, actually runs or is chairman to a cryptocurrency platform, actually. So a little bit of a fun thing, actually, which we didn't know between us before we actually started speaking with him. So when you narrow people down LinkedIn, you need to micro-segment people a lot more down than that, because the numbers you'll be reaching out to will be just so big. But we can help you with that, so there's no worries as far as that's concerned. The other thing is that it's really important you retain control of the entire sales process, and that way it gives you an indication of your potential, and it gives you much more control of your what people will pay for your service provision. And also it's about being able to create clients on demand with predictability and be able to switch the dynamic around so people are asking to have those type of conversations. And what we could do in just a moment is going into what we class as the social selling blueprint and time machine. I'll give you a very quick demo of that. But just to slightly set the context of this, we've talked about the social selling blueprint. The top part here is where you do the search in LinkedIn, okay? And also make sure your profile is properly optimized, your messaging is correct, and again, we help you with that. But this part here is where particularly the Biz Growth Time Machine comes into its own, because this part here you do once to actually find the right type of people to engage with. This part here is the part that does all the heavy lifting for you, okay? So it's a bit like having your autonomous car, except you might be in the steering, be in control of the vehicle in which direction it goes in. But this is doing all the hard work for you. It's the engine in that car, and everything else around it's getting to your destination. And then it's about having your business development resource, where it's yourself, if you're responsible for that, or whether it's your team. It's important they can close those down. So this is the context which is being explained in. And so what I'll do is I'll give a little bit of a demo of that, and it'll be in the context of, we'll in fact come into a second. I'll give you a quick demo of the Business Growth Time Machine now. Just a quick look to see if there's anything I'm sort of missing in the conversation, which I don't think I am. So do ask those questions. And we've got a few minutes as well to deal with any questions that you may have. Just bear me a second while I go log into our system. And maybe a moment, and I'll share my screen just a moment as well. Okay, so right, let's log in. Okay, so this is, I've just got to set this up as well, so I'll stop sharing the screen just for a moment and try again. There we go. So Chrome tab, there we go. Oh no, that's not the right one. It's not the right one. Here we go. That's the one. So Muriel, can you just confirm you see the screen okay? Because I've lost visibility of my screen. Yeah. Yeah, I think Muriel's giving me the nod behind the scenes. Okay, so this is like the dashboard, okay? That's a bit squashed up because of the format that we're doing things in at the moment. This is all nicely laid out normally, but it's a bit squashed up. So this is like the central dashboard. Now you can see we've logged into Muriel's account here, and over the last month, we've sent out on Muriel's account a bit over 600 connection requests based on people that Muriel's chosen her target market. And if you have a look at these, in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, 31, 61, and 61 messages on Friday were sent out. Then over last week was 93. These are all the follow-up messages that were sent out. So if you look at all those there, okay. So the reason why that figure's so high is we've been running these campaigns in Muriel's accounts now since the middle part of last year. So you can see there, if you actually include the welcome messages and the follow-up messages, add those two figures together, that's the level of outreach this has been handling, okay? And these are run through these campaigns here. So now you call these whatever you like. And on this campaign we've got running at the moment, we've reached out to 1,100 people out of a data set of 1,489 people. And again, I'll give you a very quick overview of this. I won't go to massive detail. But this is a campaign that's running at the moment. So if I scroll down, you can see there's actually, sorry about that. I think I might be missing the figure. Just excuse me a second. Yeah, because I haven't selected. I think what's happening is it's chopping the bottom of the screen off because it's not like a standard format. So this is about 1,400 people in this data set. If I then filter this by conversation status, so I only want to bring up those people who've replied, so I need to respond to, then what you'll see, there's two replies here. So someone's given us a thumbs up, okay? These are the messages in LinkedIn which are being managed by the system. And let's look at this one here. This one's actually to let me know your thoughts, so they're engaging this way. So in which case, these have automatically paused or stopped, okay? And that's because they've replied, and we therefore want to reply manually in those circumstances. So this is where you stay in the driver's seat, okay? And you can see all the different messages that come up here on the right-hand side. Now you can also send out what we class as a template message. So these may not be part of your standard messaging process, but for example, let's say we send some information out where we invite people to join us on a focus group, okay? Someone might say, yes, please do give me more details. So you can set up like a template message. Now, obviously, we don't recommend just sending it out as it is in that scenario, because you want to get people engaged, get them off the platform as quickly as possible. You may want to top and tail that message so it answers their questions very specifically and it's very relevant, okay? And again, you can see some more of the activity on this part here as well. I'm going to just go back a step. I'm going to take this filter off, and I'm going to then go and look at the messaging. And in this case, we've got a 7-message process here. So once this is the connect request that's gone out here, as a case in point, you can see it there. And you'll notice this one was planned to send out 15 minutes afterwards when they accept the connect request. This one goes out a month later, and I normally would set it for 7 days, but in this case, for this campaign, it's actually a month. Then there's another one that goes out 7 days after that. And you can also do, this is an optional service, but you can also offer what we class as hyper personalization. Now, in this case, it would pick out the person's profile picture and offer like a personalized message on a flip chart there. And we wouldn't suggest overusing this, but it's very good as a pattern interrupt, because we all get busy. And if you get a message which has got an image in there as well, and it appears to be personalized just for them, people really like it. So it's a bit of fun to incorporate, and these are the different messages. And you can also, you may remember I referred to being the, just got to get this correct to if you want to leave. Yes, there we go. Okay, now this is the stats, some more stats there, and you can see a graph here of what activity is going on. As I said, I do apologize for it being squashed up. I will try and widen this to see whether it's, actually it's just me, I could have done it on this end here. Sorry about that. And if we then look at the settings here, this is where you set it's like the speed, the acceleration in your car. So in this case, we've set it so it sends out 30 connection requests a day. We'd never suggest sending out as much as 100. So just because you can, a bit like a car again, if you just because a car can do 100 miles an hour doesn't mean so you should drive it at 100 miles an hour. And this is like the follow-up messages. Now, the reason that's set as a much higher figure is that the system will automatically handle that for you. So it only never send out what it needs to do. So it might only send out 10 messages one day, might send out 35 the following day, because it's all managed by the system. Now, the other thing is as well, if we go back to the scenario where if you're trying to run a campaign manually using Excel sheets, for example, one of the big issues you actually have is that it's very easy to end up with duplicates in your system. Okay, and no one likes that, because, and to start with, it's not too much of an issue, but within 1 or 2 weeks, believe me, it starts to become a real issue, because every time you do a search on LinkedIn, what you'll find, and it's not LinkedIn's fault, but because you might live in London, for example, but you might be running a campaign around Milton Keynes, as a case in point. What you'll find is if you search by distance and by radius, those circles will overlap. So you can find between 10 and 30% of your contacts actually are duplicates from before. Now, this software is clever enough to actually recognize it's a duplicate, and it won't add them in again. Okay, so that avoids human error, or rather, human error is a particularly good case in point. The other thing is, from here, you can also view people's profiles. You can also go straight into people's LinkedIn accounts from each one. And it'll retrieve email addresses and phone numbers where it can, where people's settings been set to not be private. So that's possible to do. I'm just going to go back to where we were before. But if any of you have got any questions here, just bear me a second. I'll just stop sharing my screen so I can bring up the slide deck again.
Hi, Rupert. Anthony's asking, how will the new limits on weekly LinkedIn connection invites affect the time machine service?
Right, it's a really good question, that, and I'm going to do my best to answer that. So just bear me a second. I try and bring everything back again. Bear me a second. What have I done wrong here? There we go. I think it's that one I want. There we go. Yes, so Anthony, that's a really good question. Thanks for asking that. Now, the new limits on weekly connections limits, they're very much experimental on LinkedIn at the moment. What they've been doing is running some pilots over the last 6 weeks or so, based on different algorithms. It's more based on your usage. So if you've got a very account which has been very recently formed on LinkedIn, and you go from sending out no connection requests to sending out 30 or 40 connection requests per day, LinkedIn are going to suddenly see that as very unusual behavior. Okay, so immediately that flag up red flags to LinkedIn. If you've got a fairly mature account and you've conditioned your account so that LinkedIn see what your normal behavior is like, and the fact that they're not getting complaints and all this type of stuff, then typically sort of 30 to 50 messages is fine per day. But like anything else, LinkedIn don't publish their limits. But we work with a number of clients, and we worked with LinkedIn for 7 years now, so we've got to know the rules, the platform very well. But this is also another really good reason as well for those of you who got accounts which are a little bit younger, or you've not had a chance to warm up your LinkedIn account yet. This is why we suggest that you also base your messaging based on depth, okay? Because that way you're going to be, when people first get a message, they may not be ready to engage with you, but it may be in 6 weeks' time, a bit further down the line, when you reach out to them again, that they are ready to engage with you. And you obviously don't want to leave any opportunities unexplored. Excuse me a second. So that's where it's particularly relevant to discuss. But excuse me a second. Sorry, hiccups. Sorry about that. So, Anthony, I think we're due to speak tomorrow, actually, so we can discuss this a little bit more. Behind the Bizgrowth Time Machine, there's actually got sort of 2 data analysts. We're actually working on the algorithms all the time, and it's got amazing amount of intelligence here. So, if, for example, it's a very new account, it's got the equivalent of a bit like cruise control again in your car. What it will do is it'll automatically try and adjust the messages that go out, the timings of those, to actually suit what LinkedIn is sort of feeding back, if that makes sense. Okay, so you've got a lot of support around that in terms of making sure that you use LinkedIn and these systems adequately. So hopefully that's answered your question. If anyone else has got some more questions around that, please do ask. So we're almost done, actually, so we've done very well today. I would like to invite you, if you haven't completed the Sales Marketing Diagnostic, to do so now. Muriel, could you just do me a favor, actually, just get that link handy to put in the chat. Sorry, I meant to ask you to do that. And also put the calendar link in there, the 15 minutes Muriel calendar link, is that right, in the chat as well. So with the Sales Marketing Diagnostic, as part of this, you will discover your business, your marketing mix, and your balanced product portfolio. And you'll also learn how to bring your sales forward and the social selling blueprint. And as part of this, it gives you your stats based on how well you're amplifying your brand at the moment, and how you can increase your reach, and how well you're leveraging technology to get your time back. It'll also assess your business growth readiness. And that's really useful, actually, because your perception may be that you're really ready to move things up to the next stage. In reality, what we've found is by a series of small tweaks, it makes a massive compounding difference to it. And the way you do that is really straightforward. If you would like to complete the diagnostic, if you just go to businessgrowthbureau.tv/diagnostic, Muriel's just put the link in the chat there. You're very welcome to do so. When you've done that, it will, if you haven't done the diagnostic before, it will give you the opportunity to book in a call with myself or with Muriel. And you also got the option to download some other free material, as well as a downloadable book, as well as a bit of a gift to you, as it were. And when you book your call, if you would like to do so, if you've already completed the diagnostic, don't feel you need to do it again. Or if you'd rather have a short conversation first or a more in-depth call, just click on that calendar link, and that will also tie in with Muriel, my diary, and we can go from there. And we can really look at how what's important for your business in terms of driving it forwards. Now, a few other general things, just in conclusion. Every Thursday we do run a live stream. We've been running this since COVID last year, since March last year. We're now up to episode 57, I think, now. And so we had different expert speakers last week. So we had an amazing guest on last week, which I think Anthony were on that one. But that was about using video and podcasting together to get your message out there. So that's available under the TV video section under previous weekly live streams. You might need to just select it in the video pane from the player on the right hand side. There's sort of the on-demand webinar if you want to actually watch this again as well. It'd be like a slightly shortened version of what you've taken part today. That's like on demand. You obviously got some other link details there as well. Obviously, what we do want to be is what we feel is really important. we've created a really nice community of people who love being part of part of Business Growth Bureau, and they're really keen to help and support each other. We do recognise that running a business can be a very, very lonely journey, and whether you're a company of one or a company of 1,000, it's just the problems are different. And also, we want to help you to build your business on really solid foundation. So your success is what we're really passionate about. Obviously, you can use technology. A quick reminder again, that's the Business Growth Time Machine as well. If you decide to use that, if you don't need it, we can offer you some other support around Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. A few quick screen grabs of what you've just seen, okay? And also the way the graphics are displayed. So again, we've got the link to the Diagnostic, and I'm pleased to say that this is pretty well a wrap. So we've actually finished 9 minutes before the time of 5 o'clock. So again, do reach out if you've got any questions. If anyone's got any closing questions, do ask them now. Otherwise, we'll look forward to speaking with you either when you booked a call in or completed the Diagnostic, or ideally both. So in which case, let me just make sure I've not missed anything. Okay, right. Yeah, good. Okay, well, I think we've done very well today. So thank you very much for joining us. Actually, I think we're speaking tomorrow, so I look forward to that. I don't know who the rest of you are, actually, because I think some of you communicated via our Facebook group and also via YouTube as well. So do reach out if we can help you any further. And I want to just take this opportunity to thank you for joining in this afternoon's live stream. So take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.